With all of the recent drama around the 76ers, it finally seems like it might be a point that their star player and MVP Joel Embiid might want out. With the recent interview, Joel stated that he just wants to win, either with the 76ers or with another team, and honestly, this 76er roster is not looking too hot, especially with this whole James Harden situation. This is not looking good. They don't have any young players besides Tyrese Maxey. All the role players are leaving, and besides Joel Embiid, offensively they're gonna struggle, defensively they're gonna struggle, and especially if they don't get much back for Harden. This roster has a bunch of flaws. So that raises the question, will Joel Embiid in the next couple years potentially request a trade out of Philly? Of course, Joel Embiid loves Philly. The fans love him, but still, if Embiid wants the best chance to win a championship, it might not be with the 76ers. So before we talk about the current situation, let's talk about how the 76ers got here. First, they drafted Joel Embiid in 2014 to a tanking 76ers team. For Joel, he was hurt for his first year and a half seasons. But when he was on the court, he showed the dominance. He was bigger than everyone. His post skills were impressive. And with an improving jump shot, everyone saw that Joel Embiid could be their franchise player. And then the next couple years, they drafted Ben Simmons and drafted Markelle Fultz. And the process was ready to compete finally. After all those years of tanking, they finally built up some solid young players that could hopefully compete for a championship in the next couple of years. And then they lost to the Celtics in the second round in Ben Simmons' first year, where they showed the glimpses of how good this team could be, but also the struggles that Embiid and Simmons would face in the future. And then in 2019, that was their best chance to win the championship. They have, of course, traded for Jimmy Butler, traded for Tobias Harris, and they had such a solid team. I mean, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, JJ Redick, a couple other solid role players. This team was really well constructed, but of course, we all know what happened. The shot from Kawhi Leonard in Game 7, 4 bounces to send the Sixers home, and the Sixers had a lot of decisions to make. Jimmy Butler was a free agent. Ben Simmons needed an extension. Tobias Harris is a free agent. So they of course made this decision to let Jimmy walk in a sign and trade for Josh Richardson. They re-signed Tobias Harris to a huge max, and then they signed Ben Simmons to that huge extension, which, looking back, was definitely the worst thing they could have done, because we saw how good Jimmy was in Miami and how much of an overpay that Tobias Harris contract was. But there was still hope. I mean, the next season they were in the bubble, and they still looked like a solid team, but Ben Simmons got hurt in the playoffs, or before the playoffs, and they pretty much didn't stand a chance against the Celtics, and they got swept in the bubble. But then the year after, it seemed like they finally had another chance. They were the first seed in the Eastern Conference. Joel Embiid just had another healthy season. Ben Simmons was playing decently, another all-star season, but they choked against the Hawks. There was no excuses for losing that series, but Ben Simmons just forgot how to shoot free throws, just lost all of his confidence, and the Hawks beat them in 7 games, and another disappointing year of not making to the conference finals for Joel Embiid and the Sixers. And then the whole Ben Simmons crisis, where he didn't want to play for them, he sat out games, he had mental health issues, and just that whole Ben Simmons situation just clouded that team. But finally, they were able to flip him for James Harden. And a lot of people thought that this could finally be the move that would elevate them. James Harden and Joel Embiid on paper looked like a dominant duo, where you had the star guard in James Harden who could facilitate the whole offense, and Joel Embiid down low to just give him the ball. And especially with Harden's improved playmaking, that seemed like a really good duo. But both years they were there, both years disappointing. The first year they lost to the Heat in 5 games. I mean, the Heat were a really good team, but still, that's not acceptable. And Harden choked again. And then last season, that was just unacceptable. Being up 3-2 against the Celtics. And sure, James Harden was super inconsistent, but they had no reason to lose that Game 6, and especially that Game 7 where both Harden and Embiid choked. And now James Harden wants out. He isn't happy with how they handled his contract situation, and Joel Embiid is just kind of stuck there with all this drama again with this star player, and they lost, like I said, a lot of their rings, like Shake Milton, Jalen McDaniels, Georges Niang, who, sure, they aren't the best role players, but they're still solid contributors that this team is really lacking now. And honestly, for the James Harden package, I'm not really expecting them to get much, because of course his preferred destination is the Clippers, but especially that no one else is bidding for him. There's the Clippers aren't willing to give like Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, Robert Covington a couple picks. If no one else is bidding against them, they can lowball Harden, and especially that he's on his last year of his contract. If it doesn't work out, Harden has showed that he's really not loyal at all. I mean, with Houston, he requested trade to Houston, or he requested trade to Philly or Brooklyn, ends up in Brooklyn, but less than 2 years later, he wants out again. And Philly, less than 2 years later, he wants out again. And these are places that he wanted to go to, but still 2 years later, it doesn't work out. So this Harden situation is just not good again. His trade value, of course, isn't high, especially for how he played in the playoffs. And sure, he's still a 20 and 10 type of player, but like, just all the drama that comes around with James Harden now, like, there's not going to be many suitors. And then also, if they do trade Harden, like, there's going to be a huge reliance on Tyrese Maxey. And sure, I'm a huge fan of Tyrese Maxey. His shooting has improved so much. He's, of course, a good cutter, a good finisher. But, like, you really want Tyrese Maxey to be the best guard on a championship team, like, compared to, like, a Jamal Murray or, like, a Steph Curry, a Damian Lillard, like, going against those guards, Tyrese Maxey, sure, maybe he can develop to be that type of guy, but right now, I really don't think he can be that guy, especially for how much Embiid needs a star guard to help him. So, I don't know, because, like, it's just not a really good situation. Like, Tobias Harris is on his last service deal, but, like, is Tobias Harris going to be your third option? Like, you're relying on PJ Tucker, a guy, a 36, 37-year-old, to be a solid contributor, especially for how pretty much he can't score anymore besides an occasional corner three. Like, it's not looking good for this team, and like, they don't have many of their picks. Well, sure, they have a couple, but they traded some for Harden, and it's just a weird situation. So this is addressing the question, will Embiid ask out? I mean, I think it's honestly a realistic situation. There's been reports about the Knicks being interested. I mean, the Knicks have, of course, all those picks. They have Julius Randle, they have RJ Barrett, and I think Jalen Brunson and Embiid would be pretty nasty, honestly, especially in New York. But I don't know. I mean, Embiid locked up in that huge contract now, and like, he's been with Philly his whole career. He's been vibing to that whole culture there, and just, if it isn't gonna work out, that's gonna be a huge blockbuster move that, I don't know. I mean, of course, Embiid is an aging big man. He's almost 30 years old now, and of course, he faces injury problems. So we've seen those guys really not age the best. And sure, Embiid right now in his prime is a top 5 player at least in the league. But like, we've seen his playoff where he just gets doubled easily in the playoffs, and unless his teammates can step up, it's not gonna work out. And then of course, those injury concerns, like, one major injury can cost him almost his whole career, which of course we don't want that to happen, but like, there's still a concern of that happening. So I don't know. I mean, there's some other suitors that's been addressed, like, I don't know, like the Mavericks, of course, the Heat are always be brought up, but I really don't know. I mean, this is definitely a huge offseason for them, and if they can make some really good moves, if they can just get this Harden situation to be good, try to get the most value they can out of Harden, hope that Tyrese Maxey can get better, hopefully they can build some solid shooting and defense around Harden, like around Embiid, maybe that can work out. But I don't know, it's a weird situation. It seems like the Sixers are failing Joel Embiid. So that being said, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on next time.